Okay, so we're going to start off by hearing from Miss Pauline Taylor, and then we are going to hear from Millicent, who is her sister-in-law. If you've got mobile phones, if you could, put them on vibration or silence, this is very, very sensitive, what's going to happen here. Pauline?
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Need to know that we're together.
Yeah.
Whoever wrote, "Time heals all wounds," obviously has never experienced the kind of pain my family and I have had to endure and live through over the last 3 years. The pain that I speak of is beyond just physical distress. This pain haunts our dreams. It interrupts our waking thoughts. It induces sad memories. It surfaces every time we hear a familiar reggae song, or whenever a black US SUV speeds by. It taunts us every time we see a black man with dreadlocks. It cripples us when we look into the face of someone who just happens to have those familiar gray eyes. We are triggered every time we hear someone rehearse that familiar but silly knock-knock joke. This pain looms over us, and it takes a front seat at every family gathering. We live it day in and day out. Ian's tragic death has left this family devastated, sorrowful, and in despair towards those who have taken an oath to serve and protect, but have once again failed us. My nephew, Ian Taylor, died on the street just a short distance from here, Coldharbour Lane. Ian pleaded for help when he became short of breath, under arrest on the 29th of June 2019. An ambulance was called but was severely delayed due to demands on the service at that time. Despite repeatedly telling the all-white police officers that he could not breathe and was going to die, Ian was left handcuffed and lying on the streets on one of the hottest days of the year, without an inhaler, water, shade, or medical assistance. He died while begging for help from 7 police officers. Not 1, not 2, not 3, but 7 white officers who openly mocked him. "I can't breathe. I need my inhaler. I'm dying. I'm dying." And then he did. The Metropolitan Police's policy is that officers are allowed to drive detainees to hospital in a police vehicle in exceptional circumstances. So a specific example of exceptional circumstances within that policy is when there is a known or anticipated long delay in the arrival of an ambulance. a policy which the officers appeared completely unaware of. Instead, they stood around, offering no assistance, saying there was nothing they could do but wait. The IOPC investigation report refers to one officer holding a genuine belief in the prohibition of transporting detainees to hospital in a police vehicle. At an earlier stage, there was a known backlog in ambulance wait times, yet no one knew they could drive Ian to hospital themselves. Why did those officers not know their own policies and training? Why wasn't Ian taken to hospital? Was his life not worth saving? The life of this black man of no value? The officers clearly did not believe Ian. They did not take his cries for help seriously. Instead, they told him to stop acting up and grow up. One even reported to his senior officer that Ian was playing the old poor me card. He described Ian's pleas for help as a load of nonsense. This was just 6 minutes before Ian went into cardiac arrest. At the inquest, the court heard evidence from 2 medical experts that Ian's asthma symptoms were likely to have been worsened by the additional stress and panic he would have felt from thinking that he was not believed and that no help was coming. It was only at the point when Ian went into cardiac arrest that the video footage shows the police officers taking action and offering some resemblance of humane assistance. At this point, they scrambled to offer CPR, but it was too late. It was too late to take Ian's pleas for help seriously. It was too late to respond as they were trained to do and should have done while Ian was begging for help. I can't breathe. I'm dying. It was too late then for compassion. Too late to take back their mocking rhetorics. Too late to make the decision which could have saved Ian's life, to transport him to the closest emergency hospital only 1 mile or 3 minutes away, King's College Hospital, where they have a world-leading trauma center. Each officer who took the stand during my nephew's inquest expressed their condolences, but not one commented on what they had learned from this awful and avoidable tragedy. In fact, one officer smugly and blatantly said that he would do exactly the same thing if given the same set of circumstances.
Jesus.
This officer was asked several times by the coroner whether he had learned anything from the incident or would do things differently now. He was unable to specify a single action or learning point. This officer was referred by the coroner to the IOPC for investigation. So over the years, there's been a plethora of reports and reviews on the disproportionate numbers of deaths of Blacks, Asians, and minoritized ethnicities while they were in the custody of police officers. Each of these reports have concluded that the deaths of people from BAME communities like Brixton, and in particular, young black men, like my nephew Ian, raises serious questions about institutional racism. So what has changed over the years as a result of all these reviews? In January 2017, in her independent review on deaths and serious incidents in police custody, Dame Elise Angeloland dealt specifically with race and the investigative process of policing. She reports that the stereotyping of young black men as dangerous, violent, and volatile is a long-standing truth that is ingrained in the minds of many in our society. Her investigation revealed a use of force and restraint that is disproportional to the risks posed, especially where there is one detainee and a large number of officers. She found that the perceived risk posed by the detainee may obscure people in their vulnerability. Such perceptions increase the likelihood of force and restraint being used against an individual who may be unwell. The detainee is effectively dehumanized. In such circumstances, the police officer may also use force and restraint in order to gain compliance to the exclusion of any focus on the well-being of the detainee, which can ultimately lead to a medical crisis or death. Crucially, Dame Angiolini found that there is also concern that assumptions made about someone may lead to the denial of medical care. Experienced officers may believe that they know when someone is faking an illness, but such assumptions can prove fatal. She referred to the death of CA, where officers laughed and joked while he lay dying on the floor of the custody suite. They reported that he was faking. He died after being left unconscious, face down on the floor for 11 minutes. All sounded far too familiar to the facts of my Ian's case. October 2017. There was an independent review commissioned by Theresa May, then the Home Secretary, on the deaths and serious incidents of minorities in police custody. It called for action in tackling discrimination. January 2018, the outgoing IPCC chair urged for the relationship between ethnicity and the use of force to be looked at closely. April 2018, a group of United Nations experts commented on structural racism being rooted at the heart of British society and cited police data showing a disproportionate number of people from ethnic minorities died as a result of excessive force. In July 2001, the United Nations High Commissioner on Human Rights published a damning report calling on states, including the United Kingdom, to end impunity for human rights violations against black people by police officers and reverse the culture of denial towards systemic racism, particularly in the context of policing and deaths while in custody. And in May 2022, a jury found that Ian Taylor, while in police custody, died as a result of an acute asthma attack, which was triggered by situational stress and dehydration. The jury also found that the Metropolitan Police's assessment of Ian's condition was inadequate. Let me translate that for you. That inadequacy means that there was no assessment of his vital signs, although he presented in acute distress. There was no assessment of his shallow breathing, no response to his pleas begging for his inhaler and for water. The police mocked him. Listen to me. One officer opened and drank from a new bottle of water, and then she poured the rest over herself while he repeatedly said over and over again that he was dying.
Jesus.
Did you hear me?
Yes.
I could go on and on, citing reviews and recommendations that have been made to address police inadequacy towards blacks and minorities. However, it's not about the number of reviews, is it? Rather, the question is, what real changes has there been or are being made towards tackling the questionable culture of the police and how they respond to black faces? What has been implemented that has and will insist on full accountability and consequences should an officer fail to carry out his sworn duty to serve and protect equally and without prejudice each citizen in our multiracial and diverse community? Or sadly, is the data and other reviews all just a waste of time, simply a tick box exercise? It's not enough to generalize or to simply update the police training manual for the purpose of documentation, or to organize a half-day course on symptoms relating to asthma, especially as it should be noted that 4 of the 7 officers involved had just graduated from the academy within a year of Ian's death. Yet they claim to have no memory of the training relating to asthma, when to assess someone in acute distress, or when they could transport a person to hospital. The many failures of the Metropolitan Police to protect us as minority gives my family reason to be cautious and even distrustful. Ian's 6-year-old nephew still asked his mother the question, why did the police let Uncle die? His mother is not able to answer. As adults in the family, we ask the question, if there is no movement towards accountability and real change, then Mr. Commander, how long before this happens again to another minority? We also are unable to answer that question. Our family has only recently learned of the work that the Alliance for Police Accountability are doing. And so at this time, we wish to publicly announce that my family and I support this forum to produce change and to involve the Black community in the plan. We are keen to be involved in this movement tonight and any other considerations towards accountability and equality for us all, for our community, and for the memory of my nephew. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. We're now going to hear from Millicent, her sister-in-law, please.
Good evening, everyone. Ian Taylor, he was my stepson, my son's only brother, my son's big bro, as he used to call him. The day we heard Ian passed away was so painful. He left a huge void in our lives. I too suffer from COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and asthma. After watching the police video of the day Ian passed away, the pain worsened than when we heard of him passing, actually see what took place on that day. It was a boiling hot day. Ian was sat on a hot floor, sun beaming down on him, and a policewoman stood up in front of him and told him she's shading him from the sun. A policewoman went into the boot of her car. We actually saw this on police footage, no one's telling us. There was 2 bottles of water. She took out one, she drank some, then she threw the rest under her arm.
Oh, Lord.
Ian sat there, dried lips, begging for help, saying he can't breathe. I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I'm dying. You could see them mocking and laughing after him, telling him he's acting, stop playing up. Oh, we've seen that one before. You're going to the cells today so you can carry on acting.
Oh, my God.
And he was saying, he can't breathe, I can't breathe. I've actually experienced what Ian went through. I suffer from COPD and asthma. And a few years ago, I had an asthma attack, and it felt like every breath that I took was my last breath. I started to panic, because that's what you do. You think you can't breathe, you think you're dying. My partner phoned an ambulance, and they said, try to keep me calm, take sips of water, and to breathe in a paper bag until they arrived. This is what would have saved Ian's life. This. The police found this in the road. Ian had his pump with him. He kept asking them, I need my pump. Can you find my pump? They didn't believe him. After, when they looked forensic, they found this. So if they found this, where was this? Because the two of them come together. He's not going to walk around with this in his pocket. It's very sad and it's hurtful. And as Pauline said, we hope some form of blessing. We would not like any family to have to go through this. So I just hope that lessons will be learned and training will be done. The hospital was a mile away. They could have put him in the car, they could have taken him. It's just so sad that Ian is not here. He hasn't fulfilled his life and taken away from us so sudden. Thank you all for coming and listening to our story about Ian, and thank you.
You can't measure the pain that they're going through.
It's impossible. But as they have both said, what lessons have been learned? They don't want another family to go through what they're going through. You can't measure what they are going through. It's taken tremendous strength for them to come here and be able to address us knowing the police is here. Colin, thank you. Thank you for coming. We're going to hear from the commander. By him coming, it's showing respect, because I know the outcome of the IOPC. But as I have said to my sister here, the law is the law. Whatever they have ruled, it doesn't take away the pain. It doesn't take away what they have had to watch on the CCTV footage. It doesn't take away what she has described, which a lot of us are hearing for the first time. He's crying out for his inhaler, gasping in the heat. No water couldn't even be poured on his head, nothing. It doesn't take that away. And thank you that you have come as a request. We know you haven't got all the answers, but you're in a position where something can be done, and by coming here, that is a big step. We're going to hear from our Commander Colin now.
I'm Colin Wingrove, and I'm the Borough Commander for Lambeth and Suffolk, and been here for just over 2 years. Listening to the brave testimony of Mrs. Taylor and Millicent, just hearing the courage that they have taken to come here tonight and to share their experiences, I can only have the utmost respect for your courage. I'm here because I want to hear, and I want to listen, and I want to learn. I joined policing to make a difference and serve the public. I've spent my entire adult working life serving the public, working in the police, serving in London. And I do want to play my part to make sure that we do deliver the very best service and in the right way as well. And that's why I joined, and that's why I'm here tonight, to listen and to think about how I can make that difference. Just listening to your words and reflecting on the account and what we heard that came from the inquest and what the officers said and the actions that they took. I can't really begin to imagine the pain and trauma that listening to the comments the officers make and how that's made you feel. And that would have made everyone in this room feel and think about policing. I can only unreservedly apologise for those comments that were made and how that has made you feel, the distress and trauma that has added to your loss. And I'm really, really sorry. I'm sorry to the wider community that have heard that as well, because that's not what I expect of my officers. I expect the highest standards in professionalism and how they conduct themselves, policing our communities. And it's difficult to describe how disappointed I am in hearing what was said at that time. We obviously heard through the inquest and the IOPC investigations how officers have dealt with the investigation and the narrative verdict that was delivered, and the coroner making the prevention of future deaths report. The narrative verdict gives a factual statement of the circumstances, and the coroner has made some recommendations about how to prevent these incidents from happening in the future. But there are lessons that we can learn. As I said, understanding the point that words really mean something, And for my apology to really mean something, it means that we have to learn those lessons and to take action, as you've described, to make sure that our officers are well trained, are well briefed, and do conduct themselves in the right way. We have fully cooperated with the IOPC's original investigation, and that has examined some areas for learning. And there may be questions that are asked in relation to that. And as I mentioned, in relation to the inquest and the points that Mrs. Taylor has raised, particularly in relation to taking Mr. Taylor to hospital, and why that didn't happen. And we heard, and the officers gave evidence in the inquest that they didn't know that they could take Mr. Taylor to hospital and didn't have that as a consideration. And I'm sorry that they didn't have that knowledge. As an organisation, we need to make sure that our officers are trained, are briefed, and do know what their responsibilities are and what they should do in all these circumstances. There are a number of factors, and what I don't want to do is appear defensive, because I'm here tonight to be really open, to listen, to hear, and so I don't want you to, for anyone, and particularly the family, to think I'm being defensive in any of my comments. When I'm trying to give some explanation and some understanding into some of the actions that the officers took. Because there will be some details around things like policy and training and the assessments that they make that do come into and were described during the inquest, but that takes nothing away from the pain and suffering that the family had gone through in listening to that, and doesn't diminish our desire to improve and learn as a service. So taking action is really important, and how we take that forward. I've also listened to community members, partners, local MP sat beside me, reflecting as well on the feedback that they have provided too, and how, in terms of community engagement and how we respond to when these incidents do take place. And I think that, again, that accountability and that engagement is really important. And I don't think we have got that right in the handling of this issue. And for that I apologise. We are reviewing that. We're working with the council, we're working with others to look at how we can better improve police accountability. And I think we do need to be less defensive as an organisation. Policing is very much around individuals and individual interactions and words, and those really, really do matter. And so we must think how we can bring in the experiences I've heard tonight already and how they've already influenced my thinking, and I'm sure others in the room, but how we can bring the lived experience into policing, how to bring the public into policing so that our officers truly understand what that means and how their actions mean something and how their words mean something. So they're always acting in the most professional way possible and always giving the very best service. And to hear that didn't happen here, I am deeply sorry. And so it does remain true that the police are the public and the public are the police, and I want to continue that ethos and work with communities and partners and others so that we can build and we can improve from these experiences as we've heard. And that is my role, my commitment to do that with my team and with the partners and the support that we have, and listening to feedback that people in the community here tonight will give us, and the experiences of others. Because we do want to stop these incidents from happening in the future to the very best of our ability. And I am here as your borough commander. I'm the most senior officer in charge in Lambeth. And I do deeply care about making a difference and making sure that our service is the very best it can be. And to hear that in many ways it has fallen short with the conduct and the comments and some of the actions taken by the officers. I can only say that I am sorry, and I understand how trust in policing can ebb away so quickly in those circumstances. But I do want to hear people's concerns. I do want to think about how we can make sure that the hard work that officers do every single day to keep us safe can improve wherever we can. Thank you.
We're going to take questions from the audience and then we're going to come back to the panel. That's the format, right?
Hi, I'm Gemini from the Lambeth Youth Council, and I'd first like to say, well, we've heard about change consistently. You said change, but no change has occurred. Making an excuse, basically, I'm not trying to point any fingers, but I felt like you made an excuse saying they didn't know what they did. So if someone is saying that they're dying and that they're struggling to breathe, isn't it basic human decency to go and drive them to a hospital or find a way to fasten up the case of the ambulance? In those 2 years that you have been here, I have not seen any change that's gone on with the police. We've been here like how many times? Twice, 3 times, 4 times. Some people have been seeing, you've been seeing the same faces here over and over again. There's been no change. And honestly, a lot of people are tired of it. We're sick and tired of it. And me as a black girl, a dark-skinned black girl, I'm saying this honestly, I'm not saying I don't like the police, but I am afraid of the police because I know the power that they hold. The police have a lot to do with superiority complexes and thinking that they're better. When we say, oh, the police are part of the community, I don't personally see them as part of the community due to the fact of the way they hold themselves. They have a way of thinking that they're better just because you do the law. Just because you do the law, nobody is above the law. And I think that's what the police need to genuinely understand, that they're not above the law and that they need to be held accountable for their mistakes. And as the pastor said, I don't know if they're still in the police force or if they're still being, gone through a process. But personally, I don't understand how you or people who are controlling the police force can try and allow someone or certain people to stay within the police force while they're killing people. That is considered murder. I don't care what you call it. That is murder. How can someone tell you that they're struggling to breathe and you turn a blind eye and you continue to make jokes? That's not human. That's not humanity. That's not human, and that's what you're lacking as police force. We have consistently seen that we want to make change. Personally, I have not seen change, as I've repeated twice. Thank you.
From the Garden Village, I'm one of the directors. I'd just like to say my condolences to the family first of all. So my condolences, and it's also good to know that the Metropolitan Police are now in special measures as well. So I just want to say that, maybe because of what's happening. Right, it's not going to be a statement. I can see you getting there. So first of all, I want to know how come a dynamic risk assessment wasn't done at the time of the incident that took place, and also would it be something that the Metropolitan, the police as an organisation itself should think about the training? It was only like 13 weeks to 6 months they can be trained for. So maybe they should take the lead, like in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, for example, where they're trained up to 5 years. So maybe they might need that extra training. So it's just one of the things I want to know if the Metropolitan Police or the police as an organisation should be considering.
Thank you. Can I pose that question?
So firstly, condolences to the family as well. It's another brother that has been subjected to the oppression of white terrorism, white supremacy. Yeah? So we know it is. But we like to have this back and forth with the oppressor to try and figure out whether they will stop oppressing us. Yeah? So my question is direct. The Forever Family organisation are here to protect the black community. We can cut out all of this trying to reform what they're trying to do because we know that your agenda, and if we learn our African world history, we'll understand why the police came into existence in the first place. Right? My question is simply this. To join and become a member, I need to fundraise and actually back the Forever family who do the job which we want you to do. But we know your agenda is not to serve us, nor protect us. And we have young girls who are confused into thinking that you hold the answers to help us alongside the MP and the parliamentary system. That's a fallacy. It's a myth and it's almost confusion. And we get involved in this back and forth with you for years. And I wonder, who is the fool? Who is the fool? Because we keep interacting with you like it's like an abusive relationship. And we're supposed to leave. So my question is, to become a member where you donate £10 a month, right? And I just done the checks. So you have 160,000 of your people. Yeah? The biggest gang in this country. You have 160,000. Will you pledge for each and every single one of them? Almost forcibly, if I say so. And MPs. Every single MP. Councillor. They make 6 million. £10, yeah, for each of your police officers would raise £1.6 million for the Forever family. You can look after your community, your white community, and we can look after ours. If we need your help, then we'll call on it. And that will cut out all of this trying to reform and build
Okay. Anybody like to respond? Sponsor got to you.
Firstly, just thank you for the questions, and I think that the first one, just talking about, so there's a couple of first questions just around driving to the hospital and whether the officers could have increased the pace at which the ambulance could have arrived. First question. So, as I've already described, the officers were under the misconception that they couldn't drive Mr. Taylor in their police car to the hospital themselves. There is police operating procedures where officers can drive people to a hospital in certain exceptional circumstances. And these would include where someone is severely injured, life-threatening injury, and where the ambulance service is severely delayed. So that's the overall policy, and what officers would be told in terms of what they can do in different circumstances. And then obviously that relies on the officers making that assessment and then making a risk assessment about driving a patient in a police car, which isn't an ambulance. They're not paramedics. The police car doesn't have the equipment that ambulances have, so they have to factor all these things in. I don't want to be defensive. I just want to explain some of the factors, and then try and be helpful in terms of providing the answer. The officers, when they arrived, called for an ambulance within about 3 minutes of their arrival, and it took about 36 minutes for an ambulance to eventually attend. So they had to make a judgment call in terms of giving updates whilst at the scene in relation to Mr. Taylor's condition, and also get updates from the control room about how close an ambulance would be or whether it's been assigned and so on. And we know that that the initial information that the ambulance wasn't given a high priority grading, but an ambulance was assigned, then rerouted to another call, so it didn't attend. At the scene, there was a point where the officers did try to flag down a passing ambulance, but were unsuccessful. And I think, so I'm just kind of explaining, and then this point was really examined in great detail in the IOBC and at the inquest, and quite rightly, it's a really, really important point about when there's severe delays in ambulance services and you've got someone who really needs that urgent medical attention and what those officers should do. So it's very difficult to assess what they should have done, but the fact that they didn't think they could it is really, I can only apologise they didn't have that knowledge. I can't account for why they didn't have that knowledge, but they didn't, and that's something that they should have had. We have since made sure that that policy has been circulated, has been sent round. We're making sure that officers are briefed in relation to that policy and what their responsibilities are, and that was done some time ago. And that will continue to be done to make sure that new officers, as they arrive, also understand that policy. The other sort of aspect around this, in terms of the way that we contact the ambulance service. So, as a member of the public, you phone 999 and you get put through to the ambulance. The police service is one of the highest callers to the ambulance service in London, and so it's a different system. We do it on an electronic messaging system, and then the ambulance service have a system where they can then contact the officers and understand what they're dealing with and help to understand and assess the risk that they're facing and the patient is facing, to decide what should happen and whether the priority should be raised in terms of ambulance attendance. But that facility, because of the high demand that day, wasn't available, so the officers didn't have that facility to use. So they made the decisions based on what they were able to assess. Breathing, talking to Mr. Taylor, providing reassurance, whilst they had been trying to sit him up in an upright position, whilst they dealt with that. And then waiting for the ambulance to attend. So I just wanted to answer those two questions there. But as I say, what I don't want to do is sound defensive around it. I don't want to try and clearly the officer should have known. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Colin.
Usually when someone says they don't want to be defensive, that's when they are.
Raise the volume, please.
Yeah. So, let me respond to the question of driving Ian to the hospital and the ambulance service. One thing I didn't mention in my talk was that the ambulance service has 3 categories, 1, 2, and 3. They rely on the caller to inform them whether the person is acute, whether the person is able to breathe, whether he is unconscious. There was no assessment done to Ian. What does it take? What else could he have said? But I can't breathe. I'm dying. I can't tell you how many times he said that before he actually died. So when the officer called in to his superior to inform his superior of what was going on, his comment was, yeah, it's a load of bollocks. Blah, 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 and I quote, that's what he said. With that in mind, the ambulance service received information that placed Ian at a category 3, which meant that they had 2 hours to respond. It doesn't take training to know that if someone is dying in front of you, you do something to help.
Okay. Also, at the inquest, he was told by the ambulance, because the police were blaming the ambulance, and the ambulance was blaming the police. Nobody wanted to take responsibility. But the ambulance did say if the police had told them the condition of Ian, they would advise them what they could have done. Number 1, taking off the handcuffs. Number 2, giving him some water. Number 3, putting him in some shade. None of these things was followed. So when you're speaking about not being on the defensive, have you seen the video footage? So did you see all of that? Right? And the next thing was, when Ian was actually more or less dying, they took him, they put him in the back of the police car. We don't know what happened for a few seconds because up to now that video footage just went. Then they took him out and tried to resuscitate him. That is when panic took place. You see the police panicking, right? And all they had to do, even if they had uncuffed him or maybe put him in a shade, give him a drink of water, just them few little actions would have given them time for maybe the ambulance to reach or something. They didn't consider nothing. As far as they were concerned, Ian was guilty of some whatever, and they were arresting him and he was going to prison that day. They didn't give a damn whether he died out the street, in the prison cell or where. And we as a family actually watched Ian die. Right? We saw the video footage where they were pressing his chest, he's on the floor, and they said, oh, we're losing him. Panic, that is when panic. All the time he was there asking, I can't breathe, I need help. Nobody. 7 police officers. They're saying that they couldn't take Ian in the car to the hospital, right? There are 7 of you. They searched him. We saw them searching him. The first thing they did was search him. He didn't have no gun, no knife, no bomb on him. So what you're telling me, you couldn't put him in a car and you see, well, just... No, there's excuses. We've been going through this from the only person that we found that had a bit of humanity and was the coroner himself.
Was that Andrew Harris?
Yes. Right, it was just the coroner. Right, so there's no excuse, right? They was told that if the police had told the ambulance how bad or what Ian was complaining about, they would have advised them what to do. They didn't do that.
I think the case raises really, really serious questions. It's clearly an absolutely gross failure on the part of the officers who were at the scene. That is undeniable, and it is clear from reading the coroner's report, from hearing about what you witnessed on the camera footage. It is to know that a loved one died due to a treatable disease is devastating enough. To know that not everything that could have been done was done is even more devastating. To know that there was a lack of basic kindness, dignity and compassion in the way that he was treated is unbearable for you as a family. I think there are really big questions about accountability in this case. So as a local MP and as a London MP, I work all the time on the issues that the communities that I represent raise with me around policing. And we do that day in, day out. We meet with senior officers. As a group of London MPs, we have, for a long time before Cressida Dick stepped down, we were expressing our lack of confidence in her as the Commissioner and our concerns about the culture in policing and our concern about these failures and cases that make it into the news and the other cases that we know about that don't always make it into the news as well. And those problems are well documented and known. In this case, we knew nothing. The briefing that was provided to key stakeholders after Ian passed away bears no relationship to the facts that we now understand from the coroner's case. And what that means is that it's been 3 years since Ian passed away, and during that time there has been no accountability because nobody knew what had gone on there. So I've written today to the Acting Commissioner, Stephen House, and we will have a new Commissioner by the end of this month, I believe. And that Commissioner has got an important job to do in terms of transformation of the culture and practice in policing to regain the trust and confidence of communities, which is at a low ebb at the moment. But I've written to the Acting Commissioner today, and I want to know what's happened in those 3 years. So I want to know where those officers are now. I want to know what's changed. I want to know what's changed in the protocols around medical assistance for people who need medical assistance while they're in custody of the police. I want to know what's happened to well, I've got all of the things that I've asked the Commissioner, and I'll tell you exactly what they all are. So, I want to know how Ian Taylor's family can seek justice 3 years on for what happened to your loved one. I want to know why the IOPC report still hasn't been published and hasn't been provided out in the public domain so that we can scrutinise that investigation. I want to know, as I said, what's happened to the officers who were at the scene and who failed Ian so badly. I want to know what steps have been taken to ensure that everybody who experiences ill health whilst they're in police custody receives medical treatment as a matter of urgency. I want to know what steps have been taken to improve communication between the Metropolitan Police and the London Ambulance Service so that it is absolutely clear where responsibility lies in the case of a medical emergency. I want to be sure that this case has filtered through to Baroness Louise Casey, who is doing a review into the culture in policing at the moment as exactly an example of the kinds of tragedies that can happen because of that basic refusal to apply kindness and compassion and dignity in some circumstances. And I want to know what is being done to ensure greater transparency and accountability in policing. And finally, I want the Acting Commissioner to investigate the role that racism may have played in the way that Ian Taylor was treated. So we need this case and the other tragedies that we know about to lead to lasting change. And I know and I understand the weariness that there is in our communities, that we're here again talking about another tragedy and another failure. The final thing that I'll just say is that in my experience there is a really big problem and a big role to play on this whole agenda around the complaint system. So no organisation will ever be perfect, and the police service is certainly far from perfect. But if something does go wrong, and there is a catastrophic failure of the kind that we've heard about today, it is really important that the victims of that failure are vindicated in the complaints process. And far too often, and I've seen it myself, I've put in complaints on behalf of and with and alongside constituents of mine who have suffered in this way. And when a response comes back and it basically describes what's happened and then says that nobody did anything wrong and nobody will be held to account and nothing will change, that itself is a problem for trust and confidence in policing. So that needs a comprehensive overhaul, and that has to be part of this process of changing the culture and practice in police, because we need our communities to have confidence in that process.
Councillor Hashi wishes to respond. Go ahead. I grew up in fear of the police. Statistically, as a black person, 6 times more likely to be stopped and searched, 3 times more likely to be arrested, and more likely to receive a custodial sentence for the same crime as a white counterpart. When they don't go jail, we go jail. In Lambeth, historically, we've had the highest rates of confinement, highest incidence of mental health, highest rates of teen pregnancy, highest rates of HIV, 1 in 3 children are born into poverty. So we grew up suffering from everything at the same time. By the grace of God, I've gone to university 3 times, but I've also been a victim of a stabbing and a shooting, which meant when I grew up, which is a little while ago, being in a state of fear was almost constant. Whether I saw the police, whether I saw people wearing hoodies, whether I was going home, I was in a constant state of fear. So to hear Gemini talking about this in 2022 is heartbreaking. I wasn't able to articulate myself as well as she did today. Now, for me, the experience I wanted to share with Gemini was, it's important that we need to understand the system, and we understand how to hold people within the system to account. And you're already doing that as part of your membership in the Youth Council, which is already amazing. I grew up not understanding how to do that, and I didn't understand where to go. And I think what's important is there's processes in place currently that are here. So at the back of the hall here, we've got Nathaniel, who's the chair of the Stop a Search Unit Group. Here we have Lee, who's one of the founding members of the CPCG, which is the Community Police Consultative Group. Lorraine, the chair of the Independent Advisory Group to the Police. We have these systems, and we as adults should be connecting with our young people to make sure they learn from some of the experiences that we've had to go through. So that's a failing on our side as adults. Sometimes we're so busy going through the trauma and the stress that we're going through that we forget our kids are going through the same path. They're following the same path. And for me, this is why I'm so grateful to see the Youth Council here today and see the young advisors here today. That's what I wanted to remind us. That even though we went through these experiences and we're still going through them, so are our children. But for me, again, Gemini, I just wanted to big up because that is, after Ian Taylor's family and Marcia Rigg, you're the third bravest. Yeah? So thank you very much for that. Good job. We have to round of applause. I didn't like it because I think what she said, and actually has really reinforced, was the key question that you've got to answer. I don't know how much training you really need to understand somebody's short of breath and needs to be taken to hospital. I don't think that requires a memo or a training course. I would have thought natural human compassion at some point would kick in and say, let's take him to hospital. You've got 7 officers and they didn't know they could do that. It doesn't ring true, it doesn't have the air of credibility about it. And if it is the truth, then the culture of learning in the Metropolitan Police must be abysmal. Officers do not know that I don't even think you need to be trained to be a police officer to know somebody's sick and ill, they may need to go to hospital. If the ambulance is coming and he's 5 minutes away, maybe we should just put him back. I mean, how much does he need? I don't know. We're going over here for a next set of questions.
Marcia, I want to keep it to a wide question. I want to direct something towards you. Pastor Lorraine, I heard you say that it was not our current commander that was in post at the time that the incident happened. I'm hoping that they both had the same or had and have the same job description and the same responsibilities. Marcia, my sister, I remember you and died and some Lambeth councillors, call them sisters and brothers, community reps, being in meetings with Commander Woods, yes? Woods, Brixton Police Station. You may remember when we talked about one particular incident which sounded very similar to what we've just heard here of a community member, the way he was treated opposite that petrol station, Tesco down the road. And I remember you holding the commander to questions and answers on behalf of the community. We didn't have one, we had about 3 meetings with him. Our brother here, Errol, who I've not seen for some time, I don't know where he found the capacity, but he was there for the community. Now, if you have a wound, and someone heard how you injured yourself, and everyone come and say, oh, remove the bandage and let me see what's happening on the bed. You're opening that wound again and again and again. And there is no healing. As a community, we want to work with the police, not against the police. But I don't feel that this is being enabled, and has not been enabled for a number of years. We want openness. We want transparency. We want you as police to say to the community, help us. Help us. And we will give you that help. When I sent the coroner's report up to the chair and the deputy chair, what I'd like to know, why was it not circulated to the IAG? Why were we not called into a meeting to discuss it? That can be answered somewhere else if it doesn't get an answer. 1 minute please, Lee, I'm coming to it. We do not want any more deaths by police in Lambeth, in London, in the UK. We don't want to hear it was corporate manslaughter or whatever it was. The only word we understand is murder and racism, and it needs to stop!
Yeah, Colin, I just feel like this room has a massive, massive rug and everything's being brushed under it. And from the moment you said said being defensive, and I'm being calm here, and I'm an asthmatic, but I've got my Ventolin here. Most asthmatics have their Ventolin with them at all times. We're missing the point here. It was attitude that murdered Ian. It was attitude. I don't need to hear about the ambulance. I don't need to hear about the medical back and forth and the lack of communication. I don't need to hear that the streets were blocked. I want to hear that something is going on with attitude, bad attitude. When 7 officers are standing and looking down at a man of African accent. Yes. Whether he's joking, whether he's lying, you don't take it at that. You take it as truth. And if there are 7 officers standing, deciding to be judge, jury, and executioner because that man is packaged within an African skin, I don't want to hear about the ambulance. I don't want to hear about what your arrangements are when somebody's ill. I'm raising my voice because I come to so many meetings and everybody here goes. We don't go for a nice light dinner. We don't go for a cup of tea. Most of us here campaign all the time. It's our full-time job. So I don't want to hear about the lack of issues with the ambulance and the phone calls and 1, 2, 3. This is about attitude. Bad attitude. And I haven't got a bad attitude now. I'm just tired. And they're tired. So if I raise my voice, mark me down as an angry ethnic. Because that's the problem. With the police, they regard people of African descent as being angry ethnics. There's something wrong with Britain. It's not racism, it's Britism. And this needs to get to the heart and soul of it. There's nothing wrong with her son, her nephew. There's something wrong with the psychology. And I think when police people go and do their tests, the first test they need to do when they're training is response to skin colour before they even get in the door. Why is this very fact avoided?
Quick question really. The issue of fear and fear of police is something that has kind of permeated throughout this. And my name is Rashid Mix, and I just want to say, don't fear the police. I was part of a group last year, 33 black activists. We took the police and we took Lambeth Council to the High Court. They were the defendants, we were the claimants. It was a historic case and we won the case. They crumbled because truth and justice came through and we prevailed. But that's a case that people don't want to talk about because we're not supposed to be the claimants. We're always on the back foot as defendants. So here's my question, Mr. Wingrove. After the gentleman died in police custody, just off Coldharbour Lane, Summerlake Road, that's the community that I come out of. So I still got my links down there and people told me what happened straight away and they explained what happened. And the question is, after the brother passed away, the police were going around the community trying to fit up brothers and kicking off man's doors and trying to say, yeah, you're involved in this, and asking men to produce their passports and their citizenship and their right to remain. This is what happened afterwards, because if anyone saw the story when it first broke, they said the brother died after a fight. Yes. That's what they're saying. Yeah. And so, sir, and to the council as well, no, be respectful, because that's what we realised. We went to the court and we was respectful, and we came through. Can you take this away with you, and you investigate this and find out why the hell your officers was trying to criminalise our community for something that your officers were responsible for? Because what that does is it sends out the signal, and that's where the fear factor comes in. It's not the fear of what they do, it's the fear of what they might do. And that's how they keep us on the back foot. And you need to go and check this one, and this is very, very important. I'm saying it in a public place, that your officers were kicking off man's doors out on Summer Lane, and they called me and they said, Rash, what up? is going on here? Man's are coming around trying to fit up and talk to us that we're responsible.
Yep.
I realise that your officers have a problem with black people who are articulate and confident. I understand that.
That's right.
And it's cool, but you have to deal with it, sir. So I ask you to respond to that directly in front of this panel here, that you will look into that and you will come up with some concrete answers.
We need some definite answers about what's happened to the police officers involved in this incident. Are they still policing? And if they are, why are they? There needs to be accountability. Why has the coroner's report not been taken forward with this outcome and accountability, and it's happened almost 3 years ago? And we don't want any excuses about COVID and lockdown. This happened on our streets and we need accountability. I'd ask, you mentioned it, but has the case and other cases of this nature been taken up with the acting commissioner? I know you have said that to the MP, and also the London Mayor's office, because he also has some responsibility around our policing. And it's no wonder that the Metropolitan Police have gone into special measures. And this was done under Dame Cressida Dick's watch. So any acting commissioner that's coming in needs to actually understand that the bar that has been set has been very low. I cannot believe that 4 out of the 7 officers who have just come out of training would not have had the knowledge or the compassion or the drive to want to serve our community and to help Brother Taylor in his hours of need, because they were fresh out of training. So what kind of training material has been happening in library? It's not about training, it's about attitude. And why would they not want to do better? It's a systemic problem of institutional racism, and that Mr. Taylor was a black man, and they felt that he deserved no dignity, no respect. But we're asking for accountability, we're asking for justice, and that nothing short of that is going to be satisfactory to the people of Lambeth, to the people of London, to my people in North London, to all of us. And I do commend you for being here, but honestly, I'm just in tears. It's out of order. So please, some of those questions need to be answered, and we need tangible outcomes right now.
Over the years that the black community has suffered the indignity of deaths in custody, the years of heartache of the families, the years of suffering, the years of half apologies, gaslighting, racial profiling, etc., etc. The years of people like Gus John putting forward training programs that the police don't want to engage with. The years of heartache and mourning of the families that suffered the deaths in custody. What time frame are you going to give to start to treat black people with some compassion, with some respect? Do we need to be bleached and become offshore millionaires before you treat us with any regard? How much do we need to earn to gain your respect? So I'm saying all this because I'm a grandmother. I don't want to be in another meeting following my granddaughter with the Zimmer frame talking about the same thing. The onus is on you as the police, the people with authority, the people with so-called power, the abuse of power that you always use against us. I'm a bit angry about this because I remember the time when a friend of mine from Wolverhampton died at the police hand in Next. And then they decided that it was basically his own fault. Yes. So, really and truly, I don't want gaslighting. I want a time frame. When are you going to start, all you police in here are going to start to treat us black people with some respect with some compassion and some regard.
The Anti-Special Measures is an organisation, and I will say condolences to the family. I'm so sorry, and I'm glad I can still feel something. Because it's become a virus, the killing of Africans locally and globally. So, the fact that the organisation was set up historically to do what? Now, that's to the MP. Colin, you remember me? And the councillor. What was the organisation set up to do in the first instance? Wasn't it to bring enslaved Africans back to their masters? Right. Yeah. Wasn't it?
Yeah, right. Yes, that's...
So it was never fixed to start with, so it was broken. So all the training that they're doing what they're supposed to do. Yeah. Okay? Dehumanisation agenda. Now I will say this, I was at a seminar when Colin first came to work in Lambeth and Southwark. It was a faith forum, and it damaged me. And it damaged me because I wanted to talk about the fact that our young black men and sisters were going missing during the pandemic. And the police weren't doing anything. It wasn't prioritised. So I had an item on the agenda for the Faith Forum. And I've been a member of the Faith Forum for about 3 years, 6 years, Donna, or so. So I had an item on the agenda, nobody else did. So when it came a chance for me to ask my question, I was told by the Labour ex-mayor, or the chair, who was a vicar, I'm going on a bit. And they wanted to talk about funding, didn't they, Colin? And you said you called me. But of course you didn't. But I'm keeping it moving, yeah? So I told my children are quite confident because I know who I am, and I home educated them. So when they're stopped by the police, and they get stopped by the police all the time, they can handle themselves. It's about the conversation we need to have, how we respond to these abuses so we can survive. So the question I'm asking you now, apart from the, the pitter-patter, the flip-flopping, the Borising of what's going on, when the law makers become lawbreakers, as Carl says, what choice do we have to take action to safeguard our people by any means necessary? Take from up what you can. I'm not advocating any violence here. I'm advocating survival.
And respect to the panel, respect to those people around here, Donna, Code 7, who all put this on, respect to you, and those that have been involved. But, part of Lorraine, you said about lessons. The lessons have already been learned from Sean Riggs. The lessons have already been learned from Sean Riggs. I'll say it again, the lessons have already been learned from Sean Riggs. Right? Same duty of care that should have been implemented for the officers have failed again. So this is what I'm saying about the BS that's coming from the table. Those officers there who are standing there, can you stand up please? Can you please stand up? Out of respect, can you please stand up? I'm going to ask you, as officers there, when you make an arrest, do you not have a duty of care to that person who was arrested? Yes or no? All of you know that. So I'm pleased to say that these officers are not aware in their training is utter BS. They are aware they have a duty of care to anyone who they arrest. If they see someone who's in distress, they have a duty of care to respond to it, not to ignore it. And to the MP, who you say you turn around and say about what you want to learn, the lesson's already there. If you don't know about Sean Riggs, then shame on you. Because the lessons are already there. We don't need to go around and do the same thing again. Those officers need to be held accountable. We know from Charles Hughes case that the officers are out the street now. They haven't been sacked and they haven't been dismissed. Those accountability needs to happen. And this is lack of accountability that's bringing about this mistrust. This has happened once before, it's happened time and time again with deaths in police custody. We keep saying the same thing over and over again. Until there's real accountability, nothing is going to change. So please don't come in here and try and gas loudness and say, I want to know why. You know full well that the duty of care that those officers failed to give, they failed to address. You know that should have happened. You should have said to those officers that they failed in their duty. You should be telling the family those officers failed in their duty. You should have to Lee Taylor. And as far as you need to make sure that changes within the borough. Forget about what's happening in higher borough. These measures
to say this, I don't care if this hurts, but those 7 police officers should be tried for murder. They should be tried for murder. They had every chance to help Ian Taylor to preserve his life, but they chose not to. And that is because, and I know this has been said, and I'm going to say it again from my own mouth, he was a black man, and they saw him as a black man, and that's all he was to them. He was a black man who deserved to die. That's how they saw him. So, with that, I'm going to say it again, and to you, Commissioner, you need to speak to, if they're still in employment, they need to be spoken, they should be sacked, they should be tried, they should be out of job, they should not be police officers. Let's have a charge officers who remain in power, if you like, after the event. This is what's happening. I guarantee that they're still in power.
They
so
are.
That's what you need to find out. Why they, if they are, why are they still in employment? Why have they not been tried? Why have they not been taken to court? And also the inquest. Why has it taken this long for an inquest to come through?
I think it is very, very clear tonight that there is a lot of pain and anger in this room. And I feel as though there is way too much work that needs to be done from both sides, much more so from the police. But I think in terms of the community allowing the police to understand us, we have to be more hands-on ourselves. The work that we do, we involve ourselves with the police, we get our young people, our young boys to talk to these officers and let them know how they feel. 100%, but we don't, until we see a change, we have to keep doing it. We cannot just complain that nothing is happening. We as the community have to be active and push and force these officers to listen to us and understand what we're saying and make a difference and make a change. And that is part of the work that we do. But I think my question is, what more can we do? How can we, the different companies, the different people that are in here tonight, how can we involve you in what it is that we are doing to make a difference in our communities? And how can we ensure that when we are involving you, it's not just for face, it's not just to see you here, it's so that we are actually actively seeing a change in our community. I'm a young woman, you know, I've had conversations with my grandmother about the things that my father went through, and I'm now in a position where my younger brother could potentially be going through the same things, and I don't want to see that. That's why I do the work that I do. I do what I do for the sake of teaching the young people around me. My brother has friends who get into serious problems all of the time. And the work that we do is trying to prevent that. But these kids don't have help, they don't have guidance, they don't have leaders, they don't have police officers that make them feel safe. So they choose to behave how they want, because regardless of how they're going to behave, the police are going to bully them anyway. And it's not okay. We are trying to create a neutral ground and create a clear understanding between the community and the officers. But it's a cycle. It's a cycle. It works two ways. We have to do the work, and you guys do as well.
I have been quiet since I've been sitting here, but I'm very condolences to the family. I'd like to apologize that it's only now that it's the first time I've met you. I had no idea about your brother's case, and I would certainly have reached out to you with open arms, as I do to all families in the United Kingdom and internationally. Your coroner was the same coroner that conducted the inquest in my brother's case, and he was excellent. And he has also conducted cases that Kevin Clark, who was also caught on camera when 9 police officers restrained him, saying, "I can't breathe and I am dying." In 2018, he died. Young lady, how old are you? 14. Give her a big round of applause. Because she's our future generation while we are doing this. And let me tell you all a true story. Sean Rigg was my beautiful brother, who died just across the road there in August 2008, 14 years ago. What lessons I've learned. Let me tell you what lessons they learned. I'm so angry when I listened to the family of Ian, because it is repetitive and repetitive and repetitive and repetitive and repetitive and repetitive, and we are sick of it. And I'm going to be very honest, I will not be disrespectful, but I will speak the truth, because the truth is like oil on top of water. You can try to muddy up the waters, but oil and water cannot mix, because the truth will always prevail. Sisters, if you know how angry I am, that's why I have to keep it calm. Alright. Let me tell you what happened to Sean. Sean suffered with mental health. He was a vulnerable person, beautiful, young, 40-year-old man. He was not a criminal. He only suffered with mental health, and he had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. It does not kill you. Mental health does not kill you. And asthma would not kill you if you get the right help and you have your pump. Police officers kill you. I'm tired of happening to another family, because when Sean died, I thought it wouldn't happen again in Brixton. And what you tell me today is almost identical to what happened to Sean. But Sean died on the cold floor, 21st of August, outside Brixton Police Station, the custody suite, at the feet of at least 6 police officers who claimed he was asleep, who claimed he was mute, who claimed that he was faking it, when it was caught on CCTV inside Brixton Police Station that he was blatantly dying. And he died on camera, on the cold floor, naked, at the feet of Brixton police officers. And I'm sure he must have said, I cannot breathe. Because I campaigned for cameras in the back of police vehicles and body-worn cameras, and that's why you know what happened to your brother. Not because of that. They arrested Sean after a series of emergency 999 calls made by the hostel staff to Brixton Police Station. 6 of the calls, which the officers claimed they didn't marry up. After 3 hours, my brother went onto the streets, actively psychotic, extremely unwell, and going in the middle of the road on Brixton Hill there, and could have been run over, or he was a harm to himself and he was a harm to the public, because he was hallucinating. He was extremely unwell and vulnerable. Members of the public could see that he was unwell and called the police as well. 4 police officers arrived and restrained my brother face down in grass, like this, for 8 minutes. George Floyd, remember him? There's so many George George Floyd in this country for decades. Yeah. And Sean was one of them, and so was Ian, and so many. You mentioned CA in the UN report, which was Christopher Alder, who died on the custody street floor in Hull, I think in 97, in the 90s. The police officers were making monkey noises and watched him die. And that sister, Janet, I commend her. It's like, must be nearly 20 years now. She's still fighting, she's writing a book. Because she found out 12 years later that the brother that she thought that she buried, they gave her the wrong body. You think these people have a heart? They knew that it was Christopher Alder lying on, in a mortuary in body bags for 12 years. That's a long story, I'm not going to go into that. But also, my brother Sean Rigg, Kevin Clark, Austin Laney Lewis, mental health again that was restrained by 11 police officers on one young man until he died for 45 minutes. Rashan Charles, who was choked in North London, you saw it on camera, choked him to death. They said that he swallowed something. Recently, we saw the death of Ola Deji Omishaw on London Bridge. But they tasered him. A black officer was there as well. Remember that. We don't advocate, black or white, if you're an officer. You can't do that. And I would love to meet with that black officer and tell him something. Because shame on him. And they could have de-escalated the situation on numerous occasions when he was on the floor and he wasn't still being frightened. And that's why he jumped over the bridge. Trying to get away when he was in pain. 50,000 volts per shot. They electrocuted him. That's one of thousands in this country that died at the hands of the police, black and white. For over 50 years with reports. Smiley Culture said he stabbed himself in the kitchen. Really? Stabbed himself right through to the other side. The community do not believe that. With Sean, when the officers restrained him face down, he was carrying only his passport. And they arrested him for theft of his cancelled passport, claiming that they didn't think it looked like Sean. They didn't want to check on the passport, and it had his name in it, which is very important. It was the most, Sean carried the evidence in his pocket. He didn't carry his phone or keys. His name was in it. He was known to Brixton police officers. He was a cancelled passport. Nobody can use it. They didn't run a check on the passport. And he was originally arrested for assault on a police officer that nobody saw. There were many witnesses because it was in a public area like assault on a police officer and public order offence, claiming that they didn't know he suffered with mental health. It was very obvious. He was naked from the waist up. He was dressed inappropriately. There were 999 calls. The 999 call from the public, when he played the recording of the inquest, told the police on the telephone, this man on the street, and he's mad. That was the exact words, he's mad. But yet the police are the only ones that did not recognise that Sean was in a crisis. And that's because they lied, covered up. Because what they did is they put him in the back of a police vehicle. There's a cage in the back of the police vehicle. And they said they put him to sit down. But Sean was in the footwell of the vehicle. Very small area, not bigger than this. The flooring is rough on the flooring of the floor. So Sean, according to the police officer that watched him do this, but he didn't do it. It's implausible. But this is their claim. While he was handcuffed and bare-chested, he was on his back, handcuffed to the rail with his feet up, walking, spinning. They called it the spinning action. Like he was a break dancer. He was a break dancer, but he wasn't breaking dancing then. He was literally dying. They said that he was spinning 360 degrees. There was no markings on his back. His back would have been ripped off. I'm going to tell the public a little bit that you may not know, because it took us 11 years, the legal challenges. And the vehicle was at speed. It's caught on camera. They would go back so fast, if it was going on top of, they were going on pavements to get through to the traffic. They did not take him to hospital. It was just down the road. You hear me? And they came that Sean was on his back spinning 360, not the customer. Because he could not have physically done it after being restrained for 8 minutes. He was very unwell. There would have been a lack of oxygen going to his brain, which is what the jury found, and he had a cardiac arrest and died. He didn't have a heart attack, which is what the police keep saying, what they said in their first initial report. There's nothing wrong with him, he was fit and healthy. There wasn't no marks on him, but at the other end, he got a death sentence because they sped back to Brixton police station, kept him out in the yard, in the back of the van for 11 minutes, claiming that the custody suite was busy. But we got a CCTV. It was police officers that were in there because they knew that Sean was coming into the station. And after the sergeant claimed that he gave him a risk assessment and went to the van and looked at my brother directly in his eye and shouted at him and said, "Sean!" And Sean didn't flinch. Right? Because he was unconscious. But he said Sean opened his eyes or something, so he was just looking at the officer. But we proved on CCTV that he lied, because he went nowhere near the van and he never left the custody suite. They knew that they had a dying man. I've not seen all of the footage yet, but they are saying that my brother is dying, that my brother is dead, that my brother is faking it, that we can't get a dead man standing, because when they brought him out, he was heavily assisted, like walking a few steps. The steps was 7 minutes and Sean's on the floor. He never entered the custody suite. Oh, he just wanted to sleep. They put him back, he's still handcuffed, by the way. They put him on the floor, face down, they do all sorts. They're moving his leg, they're propping him up. My brother's dying and he dies on camera. And they stand up a dead man. And an officer looking into the cage tells his officers, you cannot get a dead man standing. At the end of it, and sometimes I have to go back and forth, the Crown prosecution said there was insufficient evidence to charge any of the officers. And when I said, what about the officer that's looking at the officers and saying, you're telling them you can't get a dead man standing, they're trying to get him into the cell. Dead man can't walk. You know what they said to me? We can hear the officer saying it, but we do not know in what context he's saying it. I said he was speaking BS. Because there's only one dead man in the building and he's looking at him when he's saying it. That's how corrupt the Metropolitan Police are. And I'm not going to mollycoddle you. Believe the families when we tell you, because I know. You see, you mentioned Angelini report. You mentioned the UN report. You mentioned Theresa May. You forgot to mention the Sylvia Casale report. I got all of those things. And nobody went to prison for my brother's death. And you, if you think a man is going to go to prison for your brother's death, you've got another thing coming. They keep saying accountability, lessons will be learned, this, that, and the other, yada, yada, yada. This is not true. You said that the CCTV in the van was missing when they put in the van. Really?
Turned off. It was turned off. One of them was turned off. One of them was turned off. We still don't get no explanation about it.
I need to speak to the commander about that issue with the family, please. Because that should not happen. Because when the officers go to the van and turn the ignition key, it should automatically come on. You know, I have footage when I visited the station and met Sir Bernard over now, and I know exactly how the cameras in the van should work. So that is nonsense.
It was in a car, was it a patrol car? It was a van, it was a car he was in, and we went in the back.
Oh, it was a car?
It was a car, they put him on the
But they switched off their body.
We don't know what happened. All we know, we saw the video up to where he was on the floor, where they put him in the back. We see a bit of what's happening in the back. They're laughing.
They sliced him.
And that's it.
Because they did that in Sean's case, when they said that Sergeant White went to the van. It took us 4 years to find out that he did it. Because they spliced the footage at IOPC by 29 seconds. It didn't take Sean 29 seconds to walk from the van to the area. It took 7 seconds and he's on the floor, collapsed. Because they cut out the bit where Sergeant White never left the custody suite. So they knew, the IPCC knew, the Metropolitan Police knew, the officers that arrested Sean knew. And they thought we wouldn't find out, but we were the investigators. And the Sean Rigg case is a famous case in this country, along with other cases, because of family campaigning, not because you were willing to give my family or any other family any accountability. And until there is accountability, my community and your own community. Remember Sarah Everard, the only officer that has ever went to prison for a full life sentence. But what about Joy Gardner? What about Sarah Reid? What about Pamela Sims? What about Sherry Rose? That's just a spit in the ocean, because I can read off names until tomorrow. What about those people?
The police must be able to work out.
So the new commissioner has got a hell of a job to do and to prove himself to everybody in this country, not just the black community, all of us, especially the black community, and reopen all those death in custody cases, because we want accountability. And until then, the deaths are going to always continue happening because you allow them to get away with you.
Pauline and Millicent, we were happy when Marcia said that she's going to support what she has said. I know some of these officers, is it the first you heard about Sean Rigg? Is it the first? No? Well, it's the first you're hearing from her directly, yeah? And there's a difference when you're reading about something from a newspaper or a report and you're hearing it from the actual person. It's the first time I've heard from you directly.
It's the first time we've met.
And it's a lot of learning that can be taken from this. And one of the things that the young person said, the young girl said was, Where's the human side of the policing behaviour? Where's the human in this? Another lady that spoke so passionately, she touched on that as well. You can't be trained for that.
I find it very interesting that since I referred to the commander using the term of not being defensive, we haven't heard from him again. We have sat here hours now. So many questions asked. I haven't heard one solid response. What's different from when I came in here 3 hours ago? What was different from the last time you came to this meeting? We're still exactly the same place. I am sick and tired. I'm worn out. So we're still frustrated because we keep talking about lessons to be learned. Lessons have been learned, haven't they? Yes. Should have. How much more do you need? What kind of degree do you need? What? How are we going to implement these changes? What's going to be different? Revolving door. And I said, if something does not happen, real, not just blah, 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 we will be sitting here again. Absolutely. And there'll be a new panel up here and a new family up here. It is going to happen again. It's going to happen again. And I'm fearful that unless it happens to someone in your family, that's the only time we're going to see that change. So, what have I taken away from this meeting? I'm guilty because I'm black. I've got nowhere to go with that.
You see, out of this, we went to the coroner, we saw the police, they gave their evidence. One policewoman didn't appear. She sent a statement because this had stressed her. She was traumatized, so she couldn't appear. We got more sincere condolences from all of you in here tonight than what we got from the actual police that took part in Ian's death. They said their condolences. Sorry, they didn't say they were sorry. They said no, they give their condolences. Not one of them came to the family and said, I'm sorry that Ian passed, because you know why? They would be admitting to his murder. So not to this day, not one officer has come to us and say, I'm sorry regarding Ian's death. It's, our sincere condolences, our condolences. Things will never change. As Pauline says, until it happens to one of their family, then change.
Policing is too important to be left to the police, right? It's too important, right? So we need to organise ourselves so that we make sure that whatever happens now going forward, this officer is keenly accountable for everything that happens. And therefore we've got to organise ourselves locally, because we're not there yet, in order that we can come together in the borough, work out what we want from these police officers, and ask them to co-sign a plan over the next few years, which we can all sign up to. Now, I know it can happen, because in this borough, we've done it before. In previous years, if an incident like that had happened on Coldharbour Lane, there was a critical incident group. And they used to ring Black Adred, they used to ring Ross Griffiths, they used to ring myself, they used to ring you, And sometimes we used to be out preventing armed police at 3 a.m. in the morning for going out and taking a mental health victim who was threatening to kill her own children. The police were going to go in and shoot her, and we went there and talked her out and down. What I'm saying is that if you have a critical incident and a race equality, MI5, we're running interference. You don't know that Jasper is speaking. So we're going to go to him, but what I want you to know and understand, and I think the council's on the same page, is that we need a powerful race equality forum around police accountability in this borough. And we don't have one. We used to have one, and then it got abolished. It's time to bring it back. And I think the council and I have to work together to make sure that this next generation of young leadership that we've seen so powerfully expressed here are given the tools in order that they can do the job that all of us are keen for. But for these officers, they're still in work, they should be sacked. They should be facing disciplinary. Am I wrong in saying that? No. Come on, they should be facing disciplinary action. I'm so glad that Helen Hayes MP has written a most forensic letter to the Assistant Commissioner, because that's exactly what I would have done, and I'm glad to see that she's done it, and we will hold them to account. But we keep coming back to this same message, Commander Wingrove. You haven't got a grip on your relationship with the black community in Fulham, Lambeth, and there's lots of young people and others here who want to be part of that conversation, and the conversation has to start. Now, we have a commitment from you, I'd like to hear it, that A, I want to know what's happened to these 5 officers, but B, what is your commitment to turn up to a meeting with myself, Hashi, everybody else who wants to come, and this family here, to say, let me demonstrate to you what has changed since the loss of Ian. Could you respond to that? Thank you.
No, thank you, and you know, I really listened intently, you know, to the powerful and courageous things that have been said, and I, you know, will take that away. And yes, you know, in terms of you wanting to commit to making sure that we build strong relationships, that we help and bring in communities into policing around decision making and accountability and engagement. There's clearly, you're right. So one of the themes I took away, you know, was around attitude, behaviour, culture.
It's the only thing, it's the only thing we need to look at. Attitude towards people of African descent, consistently. When we start there, it works well.
No, I hear you, and I've heard all the voices, and I working through a lot of things at the moment. You've heard about the Baroness case review and other reviews around how we change culture and how we improve. You know that police are we're in special measures at the moment. There's a lot of work that has to follow from that, and how police interact with communities, how we behave in that professionally is key to that in the future. And talking about I really welcome and fully participate in a meeting to talk about with Councillor Hashi, Mr. Jasper, Helen and family, to talk through what has come out, what are the lessons. Many of the questions that you've asked, the MP has asked the Assistant Commissioner, so I'll give myself and my team will give our full support to providing a detailed response to those questions. And the ones that aren't within there, that come out from the family, again, making sure that we provide those answers. And where there are further things, and there are more things that we need to learn and take forward, by participating in some of the things that we've heard about, we can then move forward. There is some work, there was a meeting a couple of weeks ago with Black Thrive and MoPAC looking around police accountability in the borough. It's working with different groups and communities to do just that. And that is what we need to do. We need to be informed and shaped by what you want us to do. That is fundamental for me around policing, about building trust and about doing and dealing with the things that matter most. Like first aid, like everything.
Second officers together seen and know what they do first aid. And you don't want to hold accountable. Not even the senior. You talk about 4 juniors. Man, I'm old enough. I've heard all that before.
I hear you. So
we close ranks. Close ranks.
As I said,
why is a child having to do your job? with trauma at a young age as if it's their job. Whilst European children are having a nice time not campaigning, you're all saying that's brilliant. It is brilliant. But why is it child's job?
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, it's really important that we listen to all voices, and young voices, the next generation, as we've heard, really important that we engage with all voices. And we've also heard from experience, and listening to Marcia, as I've done for the first time, the powerful and how that we need to bring those experiences in to shape the behaviour and culture and change in policing and do that more. And so those are things that I'd really like to explore, working with the family, I hope, and others, to really make sure that we are accountable, that we do provide the information that's been requested, and as I say, work alongside, because I'm your borough commander, so I have to respond to your needs, and that's my job. So being accountable for that is part of that job, and then coming back to you and others to explain what has happened and seek your help and advice along that path. So thank you, and I just want to reiterate, as I said at the very beginning, I really sincerely apologise. The comments that were made, the way that made you feel, the trauma and distress, and the things that the officers weren't able to do that may have made a difference. I'm truly sorry, and I fully commit to working with you and others to try and learn those lessons to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Okay, well, thanks very much. Can I have a warm round of applause for this fabulous panel? Can I have a warm round of applause for that fabulous audience? See you all later. Bye-bye.